Hey there, friends. Today I've got a not very fun topic, but an incredibly important topic to dive into, and that would be grieving the loss of a loved one. How can you grieve the loss of a loved one? Reason why we're exploring this today is a lovely viewer named Jennifer wrote in to me and shared with me that her husband has recently passed away. And her husband was the one who shared with her my videos originally. And I was definitely touched by Jennifer's reaching out for help. So I definitely wanted to talk with her and hopefully for the betterment of some others who have to deal with the loss of a loved one. Jennifer shares, not surprisingly, I'm hurt. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move on. I'm 33 years old. My husband made me so happy, and now he's gone. What to do? I'll state the obvious. Anything I say in this video, it absolutely won't make things better. And Jennifer also mentions, and please take this message to heart if you're in a similar situation or in the inevitable event that you are in a similar situation. Jennifer mentions she'll be seeing a grief counselor. That's incredibly important. Doing in-person work to help your grief move along. The best that can be done on this video is give you some food for thought to help you help yourself. But there's probably going to be more help that you need when you are in the heat of the moment of overwhelming grief. So with that said, speaking directly to Jennifer, I would guess, Jennifer, you're not supposed to know how to move on. You don't need to know. And it's okay to hurt. You know, it's kind of like if you imagine you're a caveman running around, you fall down in the woods, you break your leg. You're supposed to lay there and be hurt. You're not supposed to move on. And we're, of course, not talking about a broken leg. We're talking about something much more significant that's broken, and that would be a broken heart. It is absolutely healthy to not know how to move on. You don't need to know what life is going to look like a year from now. And it's okay to be hurt. If you weren't hurting, and if you knew how to move on, there would be something wrong with you. It would be very sociopathic to actually be fully functional. But you have had a major aspect of your life changed. So during the grieving period, and we'll talk more about grief specifically in a moment, but during the grieving period, it's like you're dizzy. You know, you've had your point of reference changed. You know, life with husband and now life without husband. And much like when you're dizzy, you haven't focused in yet and found a new stable reference point. It's because so much has changed so fast, so suddenly. So right now you're dizzy, and that's okay. It feels like crap. It feels god-awful, but it's okay that you're dizzy. When you're dizzy, you need to sit down. You don't need to know how to go navigate through the rest of the day. It's a time to sit down. Being hurt, helpless, and scared. Those are very healthy aspects of a grieving process. And it's my experience that we try and fight that. We try to figure out how not to hurt, how not to be scared. We try to create a story so that we can feel a sense of certainty, what life is going to be like now. I would dare say it's much better for us. It's a much more significant gift we give ourselves when we make space for that hurt, the fear, and the unknown of it. And with that said, there's 5 stages of grieving that you may know, and I'll just throw them out here for you because each stage is going to be necessary to go through. And these stages, they're not necessarily linearly. You can be in stage 1 and then jump to stage 4 in an hour, and then back to stage 2, and then back to stage 1, and then stage 5. So it's sort of a all over their process. But the reason why I will share these 5 stages of grief is they help give us a reference point. When we're dizzy, we want a little bit of a reference point so that we at least have some peace of mind about the lack of peace of mind we have. That is the dizziness of the overwhelm of the grief, the loss. Stage 1 of the grieving process is denial. Stage 2 is anger. Stage 3 is bargaining. Stage 4 is depression. Stage 5 is acceptance. If we had a magic wand, we'd probably just want to be in acceptance. We feel good, we feel better, but those other stages, denial, anger, bargaining, and depression, those are incredibly necessary. So when you're in one of the stages, well, you're always going to be in one of the stages, but when you realize which stage you're in, just let yourself see which stage you're in and do your best to be okay with that. And I do want to mention a couple things about a couple of the stages. One, anger. Anger can oftentimes be projected at, sometimes it'll go towards the loved one who we lost. We actually get angry at them because they left us. They caused us hurt. Now, that doesn't sound rational, like, oh my God, I could never let that anger be there. That would be horrible of me to get angry at my husband who's just died. I find with a lot of people, that anger is there. It's just denied. So, and I don't know if it's there for you, Jennifer. And if it's not there now, I don't know if and when it will be. But if and when it does arrive, I'll ask you to do your best to be okay with that. Let part of you be delusional and blame your lost husband for your pain. When that anger's there, if it arrives, you get to let it be there. Again, logically, that doesn't make sense, but it's an emotional reaction. I mean, losing a loved one, it is an incredibly intense emotional experience. So, of course, we're going to react. And then another place our anger goes is sometimes towards ourselves. I'm so angry at myself that I wasn't enough to keep him, that I wasn't enough to find a cure, to prevent his death. We just get angry at ourselves. If and when you're angry at yourself, just know you're being angry at yourself and let it be okay. It's a temporary stage in your grieving process. Also, anger can be projected at doctors. They didn't see this coming or whatever else. Anger is okay. Anger is a very healthy emotion. It's always a symptom of fear. And if it's not scary to lose a loved one, then I don't know what would be scary. I'd also like to say a couple specific words about the third stage of grieving, which is bargaining. Bargaining is where we kind of go into a magical thinking in our unconscious, and we sort of take on this negotiation with life, God, ourself, the universe, where we try to bring our loved one back. If I do this, then I'll get him back. And we sometimes go back in time. And that doesn't make logical sense because it's not a logical phenomenon. Again, grief is not logical. It's an emotional phenomenon. Emotions work emotionally, not rationally. So though it doesn't make sense, like, well, he's gone, I can't bring him back in the flesh. part of you is certainly going to try to do that. So bargaining can take on many forms. In a very easy example, it can be like, well, let me be a perfect angel. Let me only do good, and then I'll be rewarded with my loved one being brought back to me. I find one of the most destructive places to get stuck in the bargaining process. It's okay to be there, but getting stuck is when it becomes self-destructive, is out of loyalty to our lost loved one. We refuse to go on living our life. We essentially take on the energy, the emotional experience, and the unconscious mindset that says, I don't deserve to live if you're not living. So let me stop living so that I can have you back. So this can be the sort of person who they lose a husband 40 years later, still haven't gone out on a date. They barely leave their house because they're still stuck in the bargaining. If I die too, just like you, dear lost loved one, then I can have you back. And I will die by refusing to live my life. Because there's this unconscious fear inside that says, if I go on living, then I'm going on. I'll be leaving you. And that might evoke a sense of guilt. It might evoke shame, like I'm betraying my loved one who died. I'm leaving them by being willing to go on and live a good, happy life. Not to mention the idea that we lose that unconscious, illogical sense of I can bring them back. So again, this bargaining out of kind of refusing to go on living, and I'm talking about not suicide here, I'm talking about like actually living life, not just surviving. It's something you'll go through. It's just we want to be careful not to get stuck in it. It's very healthy, very normal to be in this phase for a while. I mean, the last thing anybody wants to, well, my husband died last week, so let me go out on a date next week. Absolutely not. But when the time is right, allowing the time to be right is what we're after here, rather than the time being right, but we deny that the time is right because we're still stuck in the bargaining phase. Then the depression phase, fourth stage of grieving. It's okay to feel empty. It's okay to feel like a part of you has been lost, because it has. You lose your husband, which means you've also lost the sense of yourself that you built around your husband, who you think you are in the company of your husband. That part of you is also dying. You're losing that part of you, or at least going under the illusion that you're losing that part of you. So in the depression phase, it's very normal to have a pervading sense of emptiness. Absolutely. Jennifer, you mentioned your husband made you happy. I totally get that. So what was once a lot of happiness brought to you by your experience of your husband, that's not there anymore. So of course it's going to be feeling hollow, empty, maybe even hopeless. I believe the gift that a loved one gives us through them sharing some portion of their life with us, whether it's a month, a year, 50 years, whatever amount of time, when you have that sense of they made me happy, that's a gift they gave you. And they loved you enough to let you be so delusional to believe that they gave you the gift. The gift that they really gave you is the realization of happiness inside of yourself. Happiness is a feeling. I think it's much more than an emotion, but an emotion is part of it. Happiness is an experience that's generated inside of us by us. We sometimes blame other people, but I believe, Jennifer, one of the gifts your husband gave you is allowing you to connect with an inner sense of happiness. You blamed him for it. And yeah, part of you needs to grieve and believe that that's going to be lost forever because your husband is physically departed from you. But one of the purposes of grieving is we believe we lost the gift that they gave us, but when the grieving process continues and comes full circle, we reconnect to the gifts that they gave us that we believed were lost. So in other words, the sense of happiness you found within yourself, in your husband's presence, that's still there. Yeah, it'll be a struggle to reconnect with it. And it'll be a lot of time. I mean, if you're reconnected to it within a year, that's pretty fast. But nonetheless, the gift you found of happiness through the wonderful mirror of your husband, that's something that can't be taken from you. I mean, the best gift that he can give you is the gift that can be never taken away. And I think this is a gift of it. This fifth stage of grieving, just give a brief mention to that, acceptance. This is when we're quote unquote able to move on. And when I say move on, I am absolutely not talking about we never think about our loved one again. We never feel hurt of them leaving, dying again. We forget them. Absolutely not. It means, much like when we're falling in the woods, we have a broken leg. Our leg is calcified enough that we can get up, stand up, and begin hobbling along. And we'll hobble for a while. And our leg will get stronger. But the stage of acceptance is when our leg is now kind of strong enough to stand on. If we try and stand up prematurely, it's really bad for ourselves. We don't allow ourselves the space to grieve, lay there, hurt. You break your leg, you need to lay there, hurt. You need to scream. You need to be in pain. You need to feel helpless. You need to feel like things will never get better. But acceptance is the appropriate time when it's safe to now stand up, appropriate to now stand up. And with that said, I'd also ask you to always allow yourself to be connected with your husband. Yeah, physically he's gone, but I believe the human being is much more than this physical vehicle we ride around in. I think there's something about the human being that can just never be eliminated. Maybe that's our human spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it. I believe that is something you and your husband will always have a deep and profound connection on. The question is, will you allow yourself to keep acknowledging it? How do we acknowledge it? Always remember the gifts your husband gave you. Always remember the good times. Recall what it is that you learned about yourself through your experience of your husband. Find gratitude for what he gave you, what you learned about yourself through your experience of him. And then, of course, cherishing the things that you guys shared. Whether they were common purposes, common values, experiences. Don't let those leave your mind. That's not part of moving on. I think moving on means I've now reconnected to the call it the energetic significance of my husband. I'm reconnected, so now I can move on. And of course, I'm a big fan of inviting people to keep talking to their lost loved ones. it's challenging because what we're talking about here with staying connected, these are intangible ways of staying connected. You can hold someone's hand. It's a very physical, tangible way of being connected. Easy to acknowledge that connection because you can see it and physically feel it. But these methods we're talking about being connected, they're challenging because they're intangible. They're very intimate. Part of us doubts that they're even happening. That's part of what makes it a big challenge. Part of us is invested in our human ego and says, if I can't see, smell, hear, taste, or feel it, then it doesn't exist. So I would guess, there will be that part of you that needs to discount the validity of the deep and profound connection that you have and always will have with your husband. And I would guess your mission is to allow another part of you to really enjoy it, have curiosity about it, have imagination with it, and talking with your husband out loud in your mind, in your heart. And emotions are one of the most powerful languages. Talking with your husband through feeling your feelings. 50 years from now, I hope you can go back and reconnect to the happy times you had with him. And I hope 50 years from now, you can go back and reconnect with the hurt of losing him. That's part of your relationship with him. Grieving doesn't mean my hurt is gone forever. If you think it is, you're back to stage 1 of the grieving process, which is denial. Healthy grieving means I've made space in my heart for this hurt to be there. And the healthy grieving process means I've also made space for other things. So it's not, as your grieving process goes along, it's not that 100% of the surface area of your heart will just be hurt. No, you'll have that space. Hopefully you have that space, and I think you will, for there to be hurt. But space is also made for other things. So with that said, Jennifer, there's no words to describe what you're going through. I won't even pretend like I can imagine it. And the best I can do is hope that these words have a little bit of support for you while you're going through an unimaginable experience. And for everybody else who's going through something similar, my heart goes out to you. Talk to you guys next time.